Hey, Stevie, nice to meet you, man.
So I'm doing this for an outlet called Asian A.V Club, and basically we like to do profiles. So I hope you don't mind. We're gonna like go back a little bit about your history, and then
Hey,
we'll
no
go right
problem at
into,
all. No
I
problem.
love this story about like how your first entree into like being obsessed with film was watching a Betamax tape of like Psycho that your
Oh,
sister like.
geez, that story. Yeah,
Can you tell me a little bit about that? It's
man,
amazing.
it's crazy how again this is maybe this somehow connects to Nobody too, right? Like because there's a connection there. There's a weird connection, but I think no, Psycho definitely has a huge impact on me cinematically, just because I was that kid who was so terrified at what a film implies rather than what the film shows. You know, like I think Psycho definitely is a is a bible for that kind of film. You know, which is weird because I'm definitely the show the show kind of the showy kind of filmmaker. You know, but I think I remember like just watching even until now I can still remember a 6 years old me finding this bootleg Betamax of like Psycho and then just watching it and not understanding the psychological concept of it, but like because you are not unable to comprehend it, it makes it scarier because the whole point with Norman hiding his dead mom somewhere in the somewhere in the room in the attic, and then him cross dressing as her, it just when your mind cannot understand that concept, it becomes seeds for trauma, I feel, you know? And then when you watch it again as a grown up, then you kind of start to understand, oh, there's something really human and traumatic about it. It's kind of almost sad, actually, you know? The same with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm so drawn to that film because I remember watching it so many times and saying to my friends, like, this is the bloodiest film that I ever seen. But like when you watch it again as an adult, as a fully grown filmmaker, you watch it and you realize there's almost no blood in that film. I mean, I'm talking about the Tobe Hooper one. It's purely an assault to the senses in terms of the terror, the sound, the meanness of the film. But like, it never really have a lot of that gore. A lot of it is a close up of the eyes, close up of a chainsaw, close up of like, like Leatherface like going crazy, you know, like, and that's powerful, that's potent, you know.
What I appreciate about horror and even action, I grew up in Hong Kong, so I mean, action was like in our blood, and so I'm just curious, like,
Amen.
yeah, and so it's about setting that mood, like you kind of like that creation of dread. Then when of course it happens, but like I love that feeling, like building up to things, and I feel like you have a really good understanding of that. I'm just curious, like, how hard is it to kind of create that thing? I mean, whether it's horror, whether it's action, I mean, they both exist like in your films, and so it's a really nice skill set that not a lot of people understand, and I feel like you get it probably better than some of your other peers.
Hey man, when you have a traumatic childhood, you tend to do this thing. Nah, okay, but yeah. Look, I think it's very important for us to be able to kind of build tension. You know, like I think here's the thing: the challenge is always going to be, in a lot of these type of films, the hero will survive, but how do you deceive the audience into thinking that maybe the hero isn't so safe after all, you know? And in order for us to do that, you have to show that the hero is capable of making mistakes. And in order for us to be able to believe, to make people believe that the hero is able to make mistakes, you then have to kind of like go back to the writing board and make the hero be somewhat sympathetic, or at least people emphasize on the hero, you know? That's why I don't believe the concept of making a perfect hero, you know? I think the hero, a believable hero, is the one that is filled with a part of themselves, a lot of selfishness, because I think humans are inherently selfish. Like we think about ourselves first before we think about the next person, you know? So I think that's something to do where you allow your hero to be completely messed up and filled with flaw. I guess what I'm trying to say is like I will never be able to direct Superman, like because like Superman is the concept of a flawless hero, right? Like it's a character that is filled with positivity, while I tend to go from the world where no, my character has to be messed up, my character has to be twisted in some way, my character has to make mistakes, and there you go.
I was fascinated because I just assumed, just because you've been very prolific the past couple of years, but I didn't realize that you didn't actually make your first film until 27. And I know you worked in production prior to that. what was the kind of maybe block for you, and then how were you able to kind of like overcome that block to be like, no, it's time for me to tell my stories the way I want to tell them? Like, I'm just curious, was there a moment or was there some kind of thing where you're like, no, I think I can do this, but obviously there was something like holding you back until maybe a
Yeah,
certain.
I think a lot of it is the, again, like us being Asian and all, our families can be traditional in that sense, where especially if you are thinking about Indonesia, which is such a micro place in a grand scale map that is the cinema. I think a lot of there was a lot of what do you call it, skepticism that an Indonesian filmmaker from Indonesia could prevail in the world of cinema, because like I came from a working class background. My father slowly climbed his way to become a doctor, so naturally, being the only son out of like three siblings, there's like the father always want the son to follow his footsteps naturally. So there was expectation that, what, you have to be a doctor. What's this artsy fartsy stuff that you are doing? Um, and I said, like, look, if I'm being a doctor, like, I'll be in jail because somebody will definitely die by now. Like, so it took me a while to sort of gain the trust of my parents. Obviously, again, like the burden of being an Asian child, like you don't want to disappoint your parents, like, so there are times when I'm, like doing things behind their back. Like I actually studied films without them knowing. And because of that sort of journey, I didn't even start, or I didn't even dream. I already dreamed of making a film since I was 18, but that didn't really happen later on until I was 27, just because I tried to do other things as well. I tried to be a behind the scenes guy. I tried to do wedding videos at certain points. I tried to be a storyboard artist, but like none of them kind of stick too long, because I know, like, I want to tell stories. I want to make people feel feelings, like, so thankfully at 27, I finally said, like, you know what, it's do or die. Let's do this, so yeah.
When you said wedding videos, I'm like, I'd like to see his version of a wedding video. That is
Trust
like
me,
that would
the one time I didn't finish my work, like I think it's the low point of my professionalism, is when the bride and groom gave me 6 months to edit it and I still haven't finished it,
oh no.
just because like it made me sleepy, like, so yeah.
What was also amazing is because of a platform that you had your films on, it kind of reached out to a global audience, and it kind of was also how I discovered your work too. And I'm just curious, like how being on something like that, which then probably allowed you to book, nobody too. And I'm just curious, like what has that kind of journey been like to be a filmmaker, like for your country, and then slowly like the world started to see you in a, like your name became kind of like escaped, or like kind of left the confines of the country,
Right.
and you became a global kind of person.
Gotcha. I think similar like yourself, like even though I consider myself an Indonesian filmmaker, of course, but like I was actually born in Germany, and then after that we migrate to Indonesia, and then after that I went to Sydney for my education. So in a weird way, I never consider myself even as I gain interest with films, like I grew up on, I think, like like Psycho and Peter Jackson's, like Dead Alive, and Toby Hooper stuff. Like it's what I grew up on, but like I think the fire really was stoked when I saw films from Akira Kurosawa or like Takeshi Kitano. Those are the kind of film that really inspired me. So like people, when you see those films and then you kind of like being influenced by all this mishmash of different films, I think you kind of like already put in your mind that I want to be a filmmaker for the world instead of just one place of map. And I think I always said to people younger than me, because I'm old now, I always said, what's the beauty of being a filmmaker? The moment you said like you want to tell a story for the screen, you cease to become just a person of one nation. You become a person of different places, because you are telling a story not just for Indonesians. You're not just telling a story for China or Japan. Like you are telling a story for essentially the whole world to see. And that's why I grew up a lot on, in early days of my career, I was such a film festival geek, like, because that's where you feed on, like I still go to film festivals now and then, and it's always a cure for you to sort of not be too big-headed in a way, because like, you know, yes, you can think of yourself like, oh, one day I'll make this big franchise, but the weird tendency is always those small films in the film festival that kind of amaze you, you know. So I'm still doing that even now to this day. So yeah.
If we can talk about Nobody, you know, coming into a film which kind of already set certain rules, and so as a filmmaker that kind of comes in, how did you play in that kind of arena, and what did you kind of do to maybe make it a little bit more you, or I like how does one kind of come into something that's a little bit established with its own rules already?
Well, I think the key is relatability, right? Like I think when I read the script, I something there kind of like becomes a relatable point for me, especially the journey of Hutch Mansell. You know, I think especially now that in my recent years I become more sort of active in constantly making films or moving from one project to the next, and that obviously is a great thing as a filmmaker because you are being productive, but at the same time, it does sort of like impact how your relationship is with your family, especially with your, you know, in my case, I would say with my kids, you know. And when I read it, it's like, oh yeah, Hutch is really trying to do his best for his family. Like he's trying to not to get back into this notion that like, yeah, I'm back to killing now. It's all fun and good, and which is enjoyable in its own sense. But at the same time, you are abandoning this other side of you. And I think when I read like, oh, Hutch Mansell is connecting with his, you know, like he's awkwardly connecting with his son, Brady, or he's feeling overprotective towards his daughter, you know, like that becomes something that I can relate to that just because like I have a teenage daughter right now and I'm struggling to sort of really connect to her on a level that's, you know, where we both can just talk comfortably, you know, like, and I do feel protective towards my youngest daughter, you know, like I'm so afraid of if anything happens to her. And at the same time, this addiction for your work, you know, which I am, you know, I'm that funny filmmaker who complains when I'm overworked, but it complains even louder when I have nothing to do. So I'm just sitting there like, man, this character is so relatable. Like, look at him. Like, he's going through this phase, and that becomes a point for me. Like, all right, let's do this story. Let's do a colorful action film where the violence is punchy and wacky, but at the heart of it all, it's this guy who's finding himself surrounded with this very real life issues, and then realizing that he can't prevail without his family. So there you go.
Secret Weapon is Sharon Stone. I was not expecting this performance, and I want to almost see a movie just of her now, and like just
Look,
kind
man,
of talk about that because she's. I mean, I've always like loved her, but like this is like I'm like I love her again. So this is kind of a really good like. Thank you for bringing this Sharon Stone
hey,
back out to the
trust
world.
me, I, you know what? Thank you to Sharon for willing to do this. Like, just because I think at the time, like Sharon was only a pipe dream. Like, can we get her? I don't think so. You know, like I think she wants to do her own thing. But like when she said yes, I was just like, wow, this is again like, you know, I remember when I was 17 watching The Quick and the Dead. Just like she is such a great female heroine in the film. Like, and you know, like I told Sharon, one thing that I never forget is you wearing that duster coat as you're walking through this town, you know, riding through this town with your horse. And it's just like, thank you. Like I worked so hard for that film. You know, I even learned how to do the gun sort of slinging thing. And I was like, she's an incredible woman. And I said to Sharon, like, Sharon, please don't let this be our last project, like, because I still want to work with you. And honestly, Sharon is one of those women who can be intimidating, but then you realize like she's intimidating for a reason, just because she's, first of all, she's Sharon Stone, and she's extremely smart, surprisingly smart. Just she knows all this little detail about things, about life. And she ends up being the person that I'm learning a lot from, you know. Plus, I remember having so much back pain from, you know, like just sleeping the wrong way in Winnipeg while we're shooting. And then she's like, Timo, come on, don't be a wuss, let me stretch you. So I have this surreal picture of Sharon Stone like stretching my back, and like, how is that? That's great, Sharon. Thank you. So yeah, it's one of those bucket list thing, you know.
It's
It's
amazing. I'm done, but I just want to congratulate on this film and just the fact that, like, I see the movies that you're working on next, and you have so many different types of movies, and I just love the fact that you're challenging yourself as a filmmaker, and I just can't wait to see what other
thank
stuff
you. Like
you're working on next.
I think honestly, like it's here's the thing. You never know. Like in 2 years from now, I might want to do a kids musical film because like I do feel the older you get, the more you have to kind of step out of your comfort zone, you know. So yeah, you never know, man. Thank
I
you.
look forward to it. Thank you so much. Really,
Thank you
really
so
cool
much.
talking to you. Bye. Thank you.